Hurts has got it, wants to throw. Hurts setting up a screen. It is complete and blown up. Miles Sanders caught it. Malcolm Rodriguez was there waiting for him. That's a big play by Rodrigo.
And welcome to the 20 Minute in the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. And we are here in Allen Park after a rather somber ride back.
We made it back.
We made it back after a rather somber plane ride back. Yeah, quiet is a good word to put it, from Minnesota, where obviously Lions double-digit leads twice in that game, one in the fourth quarter, and just weren't able to make the plays down the stretch.
Yep.
And that really, to me, feels like a game they just really let slip through their fingers. What about you?
I think that's the first time where, and we heard it a lot last year, growing pains, learning how to win. I think that's a game you have to learn how to win.
You got to win that one, right?
How to win.
That's going to be a tough one to swallow. And look, everybody's going to talk about Dan Campbell's decision to kick the 54-yard field goal at the end. But when I evaluate this game, to me, I mean, there's so much that happened before that it never gets to that point.
It didn't have to get to one play.
It didn't have to. You talk about the third down earlier in the fourth quarter, the third and one, where you're driving, you've got a 10-point lead, and you're looking to kind of wear that clock down. You throw a go route along the right sideline that's incomplete, and you miss an opportunity there. The possession before that, the 4th and 1 at the Minnesota 30-yard line, you don't get that. There's some bad punts in there. Obviously, the missed field goals. I think it was just, to me, it was really all three phases. And then you talk about the defense still has a chance to get off the field and win the game at the end. And, all that miscommunication they were talking about leading in, that was a point of emphasis for defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. That comes up to bite you at the end. And
that's the thing. You talk about it all week, and it's going to come up at some point. You just hope it doesn't come up then.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tracy Walker being out had a little bit of something to do that.
Yeah.
It looked like some miscommunication there, and, we'll have to watch the film and ask Dan Campbell about it tomorrow, between Juju Hughes and Mike Hughes. And obviously Juju's not used to being in there in that situation. So, that probably plays something to it. But, look, no excuses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you still have to be able to communicate and make that play and not have a blown coverage there at the end. So there's a lot to discuss. But, Dan really, after the game, seemed kind of, beaten up a little bit. And here's what Dan Campbell had to say about that decision at the end of the game.
As far as for me, I freaking regret my decision there at the end. I should have gone for it, 4th down, and told the team that I should have gone for it. So,
and obviously Dan, takes some of the blame. I don't put it all on Dan. I guess for me, I can see it both ways, right? I mean, you can see you've got a 3-point lead. There's a minute to go in the game. Minnesota's out of timeouts. Like, Austin Siebert's on the roster for a reason, right? He's a pretty reliable kicker last year. And I know he missed one earlier in the game. But, look, conditions aren't a factor, right? You've got to hope that he can go in there and kick a 54-yard field goal. Now you can kick off to them, kick it through the end zone or pin them deep. They've got to go the whole field, score a touchdown. You're in prevent defense. They have no timeouts. So I can see it. I understand the strategy. But, boy, he's kind of made his mark on being aggressive, right? On being kind of that gambler, that guy who wants to,
and to do it all day.
That's the point. They were 4 for 6 on 4th down, had done it all day long, and were pretty successful at it.
Was right every time they decided to go for it.
And to me, if I'm a head coach and I'm saying, okay, hey, I need one play to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, to me, what do I want? Do I want my special teams, my kicker, who, he's been pretty good. He was good last year, but, I wouldn't say he's one of the best kickers in the league.
It's also not even a guarantee that you win the game. You're only up 6.
Right.
You can
or
still.
Do I want my offense, which has been impressive?
Yeah.
The first 2 weeks of the season, one of the better scoring offenses, the strength of this football team, in my opinion, we all thought it going in. Do I want to give Jared Goff and that offense the opportunity to win the game at the end? To me, I just go with my strength. And if I lose, then I can tip my cap and say, okay, Well, like I put it in the hands of my quarterback who played well all game long.
Yep.
The offensive line, 0 sacks. Jared was hit twice.
Yep.
4th and 4. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown's hurting a little bit. And that's obviously one of the huge weapons there. DeAndre Swift was hurting a little bit, but to me, I just put the game in my quarterback's hands. What about you?
I think that, that's what the math says, that on all the win probability numbers, that's what came up. And even, the most mathematically correct thing to do was punt, which I would not have done. I would have left the offense out there. Punting felt a little risky for me at that point, but I just, Amon-Ra's a little hurt, right? But then you got TJ, who kind of came alive in this game. You got DJ Chark. You got Josh Reynolds, who made a bunch of big catches today. You have other options that you can go get 5 yards if you really needed it.
Yeah, and it was disappointing. And then obviously you missed the field goal, and the defense just chunk play. Minnesota went right down, and miscommunication, and then boom, you lose the game. And look, now the Lions sit at 1-2. I think Chicago, obviously Minnesota, and Green Bay all won today. Yep. So, they all moved to 2-1, and now all of a sudden, after feeling so great after week 2, now you're at the bottom looking up, and you come back home, which is probably the good thing, against a Seattle football team that's without Russell Wilson, so they're not what they used to be. But boy, now week 4 all of a sudden becomes, I don't want to say must win because it's week 4, Peach, but it becomes pretty darn important with New England ahead week 5. And then the bye.
Yeah, you're just like
you just got to get to
2-2.
2. Yeah.
It feels like last week, honestly, against Washington, where it's like you come off a winnable game against Philly, and you're still at home at that point, and it's not necessarily a must win, but you've really got to get this one.
Yeah,
I think that's where it is again.
Yeah, and it's obviously tough. I guess what's one of the big takeaways from this game for you outside of obviously the 4th downs and how it ended?
I think the fact that the offense was still able to, 3rd down was great. And I think that's really the problem. And Jared made a good point after the game that a lot of the 3rd down non-conversions, because they already knew they were going for it on 4th down. So if you have 3rd and 7, you get 5, you have a 2-yard play after that. You already know in your head, like, we have 2 downs to get this. So that's a good point. But I feel like the 3rd down offense has to get at least a little better. 4th down is great, and going 4 for 6, great. Like, take that every time. You shouldn't have to go for it 6 times on 4th down.
3 of 16, 18.8%. That's just not good enough.
No.
Not for an offense as good as Detroit's, and not when you weren't. It's not like you were put behind the 8 ball a ton with sacks, with penalties.
No, penalties weren't a problem.
That wasn't a factor at all for this team. It was just kind of self-inflicted stuff in terms of just missed opportunities, a missed throw here, a drop ball there. Just they never seemed like to be in great rhythm outside of having to pull
first quarter,
and then having to make the 4th down plays to kind of keep drives alive. It just wasn't efficient offensively. It was effective, but not efficient, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's the big takeaway for me, is that the 3rd down, you got to convert more than 18% when it's all said and done. But again, I think the fact that you were in this game, and nobody wants to be in the game, you want to win the game. But the fact that you were in this game with, honestly, the worst game of the 3, in my opinion, this year, and you still should have won it, I mean, you got to feel decent about that.
But it comes down to, if ifs and buts were candy nuts and every day be Christmas,
exactly.
right?
Nobody,
I mean, at some point in the NFL, and Jared talked about that too. He doesn't, he kind of feels like they're it's not we need to learn how to finish and we're almost there. He made the point after the game that he thinks they are there.
You just got to finish.
You just have to make a play.
Yeah.
Just have to make one play. And really, that game came down to one play in the final couple minutes, and Minnesota made them all.
Yeah. And again, like, Minnesota made them all with KJ Osborne and a big game from Adam Thielen and Alexander Madison coming in after Dalvin Cook. This was not like Cook got his, and then when it was crunch time, was not in the game. Justin Jefferson got nothing. You got beat by the 2nd and 3rd wide receivers and the second string running back.
Is that worrisome for this Lions defense and that secondary?
think-
Now, I
I
thought
think a
Jeff
little.
Okudah played terrific.
I mean,
I mean,
Justin
he
Jefferson
played
did nothing. That's
amazing.
what happened.
Amani Oruwariye, not so much the case. Obviously struggled with penalties, struggled with Adam Thielen. A little bit worrisome to me. And then obviously the huge injury news there. Tracy Walker, non-contact in the first
not
quarter.
look good.
Didn't look good when a player grabs at the back of that leg. I mean, we saw it last year with
Yeah.
Jeff Okudah and with Romeo Okwara, that the fear is, and Dan said afterward that it's that ankle area. It could be Achilles. And anytime you hear Achilles, that's something you never want to hear.
It's not something that just gets said and then I feel like doesn't happen. If you're
Right.
saying it, you got the
kinda have a
idea
good
in your
idea.
head. All right.
Yeah, and he struggled to get back to the sideline. Walked
The immediate cart.
the
was-
immediate
was
cart.
bad.
Yeah, that I don't like.
No.
They weren't like, let's go to the tent and pull the tent over there. Like, oh, we need a cart.
Yeah.
Let's go. We didn't see him again.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is a guy that you signed him to the deal this offseason. He's a core member of your team. Led the team last year with 103 tackles. Was leading the team with 18 tackles through the first 2 weeks. And that's a huge blow to that
That's a
secondary.
ginormous loss. I mean, that's your defensive captain, that's your leader, that's your leading tackler, and it doesn't make necessarily a ton of plays in the pass game, which is what I feel like is the narrative on Tracy. But
Right.
he's not in the game, and you see what happens with the Juju Hughes in that last play. It's like he might not be picking off every ball, but he's in the right spot more often than not.
Yeah, so now a ton of pressure on Deshaun Elliott now to step up and kind of be that guy back at that safety position. Juju Hughes has, played pretty well. We'll have to watch the film and kind of see where the blame falls on that last touchdown. But look, Afatu Melifanu.
Yeah, this is big for Iffy now.
Now,
Back
if
healthy.
you've moved that from corner to safety, and now he's going to get an opportunity. I don't know if he was a healthy scratch. He was a full participant in practice this week, but maybe they were just kind of still trying to
Hadn't
give him
practiced in
another
a
week.
while,
He hadn't
yeah.
practiced in a while. We'll see. But it now becomes important that the third-round pick last year gets his opportunity to step up
Or
now
even
and
Kirby,
probably
third-round
play.
pick this
And
year,
Kirby
too.
Joseph, too, 100%.
You have assets invested into that position that now need to rise up a little bit.
It's your time.
Yeah.
I thought Jared Goff played a pretty good game. I thought he was solid. He finished 25 of 41, 277 yards, 1 touchdown. Now the interception, obviously, at
The
the
interception,
end, is,
whatever.
I just wiped that away. I thought he was really good using his feet today, Peach.
Little
Eluding.
spins. the
Yeah,
little
he had a couple
backward
of spin
spins.
and eluding the rush a little bit. I think he was the big reason why there were no sacks. I
Yeah.
don't think it was just because he could sit back there and the offensive line did their job. I
And-
mean, that's a pretty good rushing duo there with Didion Hunter and Zadarius Smith. And
He was moving. We didn't see any of that from him last year.
No.
The movement up and back and around and able to throw on the run and making the one he threw. I think it was to Reynolds where he spun out and was throwing on the move. It's like that. Where was that at any point last year?
Yeah.
Because it's here now. and
It's
it
here
looked
now.
Great today.
it looked great today. And, I think, you can obviously put this loss on a lot of, different people. But Jared Goff, to me, is not one of them.
No.
I think I thought he played well enough for them to win this game. I love the fact that Jamal Williams
I was
came
going to say
in.
Jamal Williams came in. And
20 carries, 87 yards, averaged 4.4 yards per carry, had the 2 touchdowns. And now he obviously doesn't give you what Swift does in the passing game.
Yeah.
But look, this is a team with DeAndre Swift or without. They want to run the football. That's the staple of this offense. And so I thought it was really encouraging that a guy like Jamal Williams can come in, get 87 yards, average that per carry, rush for a couple of touchdowns, and your run game, stays on track. 139 yards, average 4.0. That's what you want in a couple of touchdowns. I think Dan Campbell will take that every day.
yeah, I the way that he just came in and he had a couple where he bounced outside. The one where he stayed in bounds in the fourth quarter, he could have had 5-6 more yards, but made the conscious decision to milk the clock a little bit, which ended up not mattering. But it was a good thought in the process. But the second touchdown was he bounced and what was that, 12 yards? That was a little bit of a chunk play. Like he looked really good, and that's a luxury to have a 1B to the Swift 1A that if he's down, you can still throw him out there for 10, 15 carries, and he'll be able to get you chunk plays like that.
100%. So to me, really the key plays to me offensively, I thought you had a chance to win this game on offense
Yeah.
if you make some plays early. The 3rd and 1 that I talked about before, I think it was 10:53 left on the clock. You're up by 10. You're at your own 27-yard line, 3rd and inches. I don't even think it was 3rd and 1.
Yeah,
And then you throw it, down the right side. No, I get it. There was a one-on-one matchup there. You obviously liked that matchup. And I think, more often than not, you trust
and
Josh
Jared,
Reynolds to
Jared
go up
trusts
there
Josh
and go get it. But look, credit Minnesota Vikings, that corner. I don't know who it was, but made a good play
good play
out
on
there.
the
Was
ball,
right
yeah.
on it. But to me, again, we just
You
mentioned
don't
the
need
rushing numbers.
20,
I
25
think Jared can just
Yeah.
fall forward and get that. Now you're up 10. You're at the 28, 30-yard line. Now you're running at least another 2.5, 3 minutes off the clock. You're putting Jack Fox in a better position to punt the football. And I was a little surprised by Jack today, too. I didn't think he had his greatest game.
It seemed like he got thrown off by the quick punt and then ended up taking the delay of game, and he got hit. And then the ensuing punt was not very good. I felt like the whole timing of that.
What was that, by the way?
That chaos.
Because if you sub offensively, the ref is going to stand there and let the defense sub. So you're not gaining anything by.
And
I can see you try to maybe.
That was coming out of the quarter break too. Wasn't that the first play of the second quarter?
I believe so.
And that was just like,
yeah,
you had time to think about that, and that's what happened.
Well, and the other one too. You called the right before the last touchdown. Detroit calls a timeout.
Yeah, that was weird.
Defensively,
that was weird.
And he, Dan Campbell said afterward that he wanted to give his pass rush a little bit of a rush. He was really trying to come after him, and he sensed that those guys were gassed a little bit, and wanted to give them a little break. But I think in that situation, Minnesota's running it up to spike it.
Yeah.
So now
the clock's going to stop.
Now the clock's right. The clock's stopping either way, and I think you just give them a chance to be like, okay, hey, what play do we really like here? Like, this is an important situation. And then defensively, you have an opportunity to, okay, what play do we like here? Let's set ourselves up.
You're coming out of timeout. You have to be good to go.
And
Everybody
to
has
have a
to be aware of what's
miscommunication
happening.
out of the timeout. I thought, boy, it's just some of those things that we talk about where you kind of just shoot yourself in the foot. The 3rd and 1 you don't get, the 4th and 1 that you don't get at the Minnesota 30, the missed field goal. You've got to trust that your guy can come in and kick a 54-yarder if the coach wants to do that. The miscommunication and the busted coverage late. It was all just a collection of things that just didn't go the Lions' way.
Yeah, and especially after starting so fast and getting out to 14-0, and you're feeling great. And you knew, again, much like Washington, they have too many offensive players to just lay down.
Yeah, you knew that game, and they came back 14-14. I thought, okay, now we've got a game. And then to come out 24-14, you do the exact same thing, and you get that double-digit lead again. And then you just have the 4th quarter that you did with really all 3 phases lost it for them.
Yeah.
You can't blame the offense. You can't blame the defense. You can't blame special teams. It was really a collection of all 3, and I think that's probably got to be really disappointing for Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I think this is just, it's one of those things, like, I can't even describe, like, it just happened. You can't even, like, really pinpoint who it's on or where it really went wrong, because it shouldn't have gotten to the final play, and it shouldn't have gotten to the point where you have to decide punt or go or field goal or whatever the decision ended up to being.
Right.
It was just like, it all just kind of unfolded and rolled out there, and it ended up how it ended up.
And that's what they got to get past, right? They've got to get past that. They've got to find a way to finish. They've got to find a way to pull out some of these games. And look, it's not easy to go on the road and play in Minnesota. That would have been a really good win.
That would have been
that would have been a great win. But I think it was there for the taking. And if you're going to be a playoff team, if you're going to be one of those teams where they're talking about you're in the graphic in December, right? You're in the playoff conversation.
In the hunt. You just want to be on the graphic.
These are kind of the games that you're like, boy, that could really, put us over the edge. That could separate us from something,
I also think it's the problem of not closing, but I think, again, this proves that you can, and you have some easy road games on the schedule. Like, you can go to New York twice against 2 not so great teams. You can go to Chicago against a not so great team. And if you can go punch for Minnesota for 59 minutes and 22 seconds, you can probably go punch for punch with a lot of these lesser teams on the road as well.
100%. But it is the NFL, and you just never know.
Yeah.
And it takes one injury, it takes one whatever to kind of change your circumstance. But you'd like to take advantage of the ones that you can when you can do them, and
for
not
sure.
thinking ahead to, well, I think we can do this, not
Yeah.
knowing what the future holds. But obviously, a tough loss for Detroit. They fall to 1-2 on the season. They've got Seattle coming in. I think it's probably good that they're back at home.
Big get-right spot.
Yeah, big
Big
get-right
get-right
spot.
spot.
And so I think if you can get to 2-2 and you head to New England, I think you're still in a pretty good spot there. It's way early in the season, but now it's important. Now you've got to come back home and play as well as you did versus Washington, get to 2-2, and then see what happens on the road. And then you can take a bye week, which I think is going to serve Detroit well being early with some of the injuries to
Swift dinged
Swift.
up. St. Brown dinged up. Josh
Reynolds
Reynolds
was
apparently dinged up.
Yeah. So, I mean, they got some injuries. Get through these 2 weeks, have a week to rest. And boy, Seattle's a big one this week. So it's a real big one.
It's going to be a get-right spot. And I think this is the game that, again, like I said before, like Washington, but now I think even coming off this even more heartbreaking road division loss, this is where you're going to see who this team is at this point.
100%. Well, we'll see. PJ and I will be here all week breaking down what happened from Minnesota. We'll move on to Seattle midweek and end of the week. Obviously, the 20 in the Huddle podcast this week. I'll have a breakdown of Seattle. I've got a couple Joshes, I think, lined up for
Josh and Josh.
I got a couple
That's a
Joshes lined up for the podcast this week. So, look, we'll have it all broken down here. Tough loss for Detroit, but they've got to turn around and get right at versus Seattle next week. So we'll see if they can do it.